On July 30th, 2025, the streets of Birmingham fell into a haunting silence under the weight of a grief too profound for words, as the hearse carrying Ozzy Osbourne's coffin slowly rolled through the city where it all began. Sharon Osbourne, her figure trembling with sorrow, walked alongside their children through a sea of fans, the cries blending into one anguished requiem of farewell. This was not merely the passing of a man, it was the collapse of an entire era, the final breath of a voice that once thundered through the veins of generations. Ozzy's funeral was not just a goodbye. It was a scream from the deepest corners of millions of hearts who once found solace, rebellion, and vital meaning in the music of a broken man who dared to shout his raw truth to the world. Please take a moment of silence to honor this artist, because some people, when they leave this world, don't leave behind silence. They leave behind a void that not even music can fill. Before the world ever called him the Prince of Darkness, before stadiums shook with the roar of tens of thousands of fans, and before Sharon, trembling, placed her hand over her heart during a tear-filled memorial in Birmingham, Ozzy Osbourne was simply a poor boy carrying the fear of being forgotten in the very place where he was born. Ozzy Osbourne was born December 3, 1948, in Aston, a working-class neighborhood of Birmingham, where low-roofed houses lay covered in coal dust and the clangs of metal rang day and night. He was the fourth of 6 children, raised in a cramped home without a bathroom or heating, where every meal was a struggle for his parents, John and Lillian, who worked tirelessly, yet still could not afford to provide for their family. From a young age, Ozzy battled dyslexia, endured bullying for his awkward speech, and was branded worthless, both at school and at home. While classmates dreamed of becoming engineers or doctors, he only dared to dream of surviving. At 15, he dropped out of school, no diploma, no direction, and stepped into a real darkness. At 17, while his peers were busy with first dates or final exams, Ozzy Osbourne was thrown into Winson Green Prison for stealing a few clothes and a cheap radio. Not because he was evil, but because he was desperate. So poor, he could see no escape beyond that act of desperation. With no money for bail, no one to vouch for him, Ozzy was locked into a cell as cold as ice, windowless, with only the drip of water and the damp stench of fear clinging to his body. He later shared that each night in prison, he curled up in the dark, listening to guard footsteps and distant cries, and there were moments he believed he had died, that no one remembered him, no one cared, no one loved him at all. He said, "I feared not the beating, I feared I would vanish as if I had never existed." A silent agony that poor boys are never permitted to speak aloud. Yet in that rock-bottom moment, he vowed to himself, if he ever got out, he would never live that way again. He would find a place to scream his pain, to turn tears into sound, and he discovered that place in music. When he was released after 6 weeks, Ozzy was no longer just a boy from Aston. He was a soul torn apart, desperately searching for a rhythm strong enough to keep him alive. And then, destiny led him to the Beatles, not under stage lights, but on a cold, rain-drenched afternoon when he heard "She Loves You" broadcast from an old radio, and he wept like a child. For the very first time, he saw hope. A world where he would not be judged by his spelling mistakes or poverty, but heard through music, through heart, and that moment saved him. Once, then again, and again, each time life threatened to pull him back into darkness. In 1968, in a dilapidated warehouse in Birmingham, 4 lost souls found each other, not because they were alike, but because they carried cries, no. One else wanted to hear, and they forged it into Black Sabbath. They were not handsome, not polished, none formally trained, but they bore the scars of working-class lives, and they sang with rage, with fear, with nightmares born of real pain. Their music, with albums like Paranoid and Master of Reality, was never meant for entertainment, but for confession, for liberation. Ozzy's voice was not smooth. It was shaky, screaming, choking with anguish, like the heart of a generation the world had forgotten. But success raced in too fast and swept him into chaos and addiction. In 1979, he was dismissed from Black Sabbath for losing control of himself. Yet, just as everything fell apart, Ozzy found the one person who never left: Sharon. She became his manager, his lover, his companion, guiding him back into the light with a solo career that blazed: Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, No More Tears. And when he seemed to have nothing left to lose, Ozzy entered the strangest chapter of his life. He starred in the reality show, The Osbournes. From icon of darkness, he became the quirky dad adored by millions of American families, a living testament that some soldiers hit rock bottom but still find the courage to climb, one scar at a time. In 2019, the world-shaking voice of Ozzy Osbourne fell silent to a diagnosis he could not escape: Parkinson's disease, a relentless, degenerative neurological battle that steadily wrenched away his mobility and independence. What began as tremors in his hands became shuffling steps, and by early 2025, he could no longer walk unassisted, his once towering stage presence reduced to fragile shuffles across cold hospital corridors. Throughout every agonizing setback, surgeries, failed therapies, long nights of pain, Sharon Osbourne remained unwavering at his side, not just as his manager, but as his guardian angel, nurse, and soulmate. Every time he slipped or lost strength, she held him, whispered hope, wiped his sweat, and made a promise: "We fight this together." And fight he did, with the heart of a lion and the defiance of a rebel, refusing to let the disease define the closing chapter of his story. Despite the trembling voice, despite the years of physical decay, Ozzy insisted on one final gift to his hometown: a farewell concert titled Back to the Beginning, held on July 5, 2025 at Villa Park. Once the neighborhood pitch where he watched football as a boy dreaming of escape. It was no ordinary show. It was a cathartic triumph, a declaration of life, love, and legacy. Black Sabbath bandmates reunited to share the stage once more, their riffs ringing through the stadium like war cries against oblivion. Ozzy, perched in a wheelchair by the drum riser, sang each lyric with trembling lips, each note a heartbeat he would not surrender. Tears spilled freely beneath his aviator glasses as the crowd chanted along, "Ozzy! Ozzy! Ozzy!" a roaring testament to the man who had taught them how to roar. The night sky above Birmingham seemed to pulsate to the rhythm of Iron Man, Paranoid, Crazy Train, No More Tears. Each song layered with sorrow, gratitude, defiance, and love. Friends and legends joined. A surprise appearance by Tony Iommi during Paranoid brought the audience to its knees. The air crackled with electricity, and Ozzy, weak but unbroken, raised a trembling fist high enough for even the heavens to see his victory over darkness. Tears rolled down faces young and old. No dry eyes remained in the stadium that night. The show, streamed globally, raised millions for Parkinson's research. Ozzy's last gesture of love to a community that had sustained him and a cause that had threatened everything. 17 days later, on July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne exhaled his final breath, surrounded by family in the quietude of home. He was 76 years old. His legendary journey ended not with a roar on stage, but with a whisper of farewell from those who loved him most. Yet the farewell concert had sealed his victory. It was the final chord he chose to play, defiant, bold, and unyielding. In the aftermath, the world paused. Television anchor voices cracked as they spoke his name. Music icons, from Metallica to Slash, from Dave Grohl to Lady Gaga, spoke not only of Ozzy's talent, but of his courage, humor, and undying spirit. Fans across the globe lit candles in their living rooms, placed his albums on altars in front of fireplaces, and sent messages of gratitude that streamed across social media in waves. In Birmingham, banners reading "Thank you, Ozzy" hung from rooftops, and the city's Freedom Award was posthumously bestowed upon him just days after his death. A solemn salute from the place that both birthed him and bade him farewell. Ozzy's final performance was more than a concert. It was a love letter written in guitar chords and steady cheers, in tears and in triumph. It reminded everyone that even when the body withers, the spirit can still shine brightest at the end. Through every painful note and every trembling applause, Ozzy Osbourne said, "I still exist." And for one last time, he made the whole world believe it with him. At exactly 1 p.m. on July 30th, 2025, Broad Street seemed to shudder under a grief that made the sun pale. The hearse carrying Ozzy Osbourne's coffin, draped in soft purple roses spelling out Ozzy, moved forward at a heartbreaking crawl. Fans, who had camped since dawn, stood jeweled in tears, clutching with shaking hands faded Black Sabbath posters, trembling notes, wilted blooms, creating a living tapestry of mourning that stretched for blocks. The moment the hearse rolled past, applause rose as one thunderous exhale. It was not reverence, it was grief made visible. Voices joined in a steady, soft chant, "Ozzy, Ozzy," as if calling him back from the abyss. When the procession paused at Black Sabbath Bridge, a shrine that had become sacred ground, Sharon stepped into view. She was a silhouette carved from sorrow, dressed in somber black, clutching a gold chain with Ozzy's wedding ring near her chest, the symbol of 43 years bound in iron and love. Her children, Kelly, Jack, Amy, Louie, stood as her fortress, silent but unflinching. And then Sharon lowered her gaze to see Ozzy spelled in petals, and something inside her shattered. Shoulders heaving, face buried in trembling hands, she sobbed, each guttural breath a confession of a love too deep to contain. Crowds did not step back. They leaned in. 1,000 raw voices rose. "We love you, Sharon! We love you, Sharon!" Their cry wasn't pity. It was solidarity forged from shared brokenness. Hands lifted peace signs into the sky, petals drifted on the wind, and the fragrance of mournful flowers cocooned Sharon in a halo of unspeakable sorrow. Then came Boston Brass. Their first note shattered the hush. Iron Man took shape in brass and drum, a funeral anthem that burned bright. The echo ricocheted off the water below, as though the city itself answered, "This is not surrender." When the melody peaked, Sharon's tear-stained gaze rose. With a quivering fist clutching the chain, she raised a peace sign to the crowd, not in acceptance of loss, but as an immortal vow. Love remains. Mayor Zafar Iqbal approached, voice trembling as he placed a single white rose on the memorial bench. No words could bridge the chasm of grief. His bowed head spoke volumes. The crowd reflexively bowed too, silent, solemn, united. Even the stones seemed to ache. Sharon, supported by her children, turned toward the hearse again. The engines hummed to life, a slow requiem as the cortege carried Ozzy's coffin onward, toward a private farewell at Buckinghamshire. No cheers, just the finality of unspoken sorrow flooding the air. Across the world, Screens flickered with replay after replay of that moment. Sharon trembling on the bridge, Iron Man roaring the chant, "We love you." Sharon, rising like a hymn, raw, real, unyielding. Commentators called it the memorial of a generation, when one woman's heartbreak became a city's cry. More than tribute boards or posthumous honors, Ozzy's legacy pulses in souls once plunged into darkness, souls he salvaged with music. That funeral was not a goodbye. It was proof that love can declare victory even when all else is lost. For Sharon, those tears were not only grief, they were release. In that bridge's hush, she let go of decades of fear, of whispered pleas to heaven, of bedside vigils for a husband she refused to lose. She carried their love forward, titanic, unbroken. Ozzy's funeral was not the end. It was the final chord in a composition that reverberates through time. And Sharon's broken cry remains the most sacred symbol of the truth, that real love never dies, and that legacy can endure. Through even the deepest sorrow, through every drop of blood-wrenching grief. The journey from a poor boy trembling in the shadows of Winson Green Prison to an immortal global music icon was not just a tale of success. It was a hero's ballad written in tears, blood, and unwavering courage. Ozzy Osbourne never hid his scars. He didn't deny the addiction, the breakdowns, the decay of time and disease. That raw honesty, that unapologetic nakedness, made him a hero to every soul that had ever been lost. They saw themselves in him, distorted, torn, guilty, but still worthy of love. When Sharon wept at the funeral, her tears were not only a widow's sorrow, they were the strangled cry of an entire era ending. 43 years of devotion, beyond stages, through hospitals, through life's most brutal trials, held together not by perfection, but by a stubborn heartbeat that refused to stop loving. And when thousands chanted Ozzy on that farewell day, it wasn't just a goodbye, it was a thank you from hearts he once saved. Ozzy wasn't just music, he was a confession to the broken. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. He was fire to those who thought theirs had gone out. Birmingham, the city that once branded him useless, welcomed him home with love. The honorary citizenship he received just weeks before his death wasn't just a medal, it was a late apology, a long overdue embrace from the place that once pushed him into despair. But Ozzy held no grudge. He smiled quietly, as he always had, because he knew the greatest forgiveness is turning your wounds into light for others. And maybe that's his real legacy, not just rock, not just legend, but a mirror for every soul that ever doubted their worth. He was the whisper to bullied kids, to those crying in hospital bathrooms, to addicts shaking in the dark. You're not done. There's still a song for you to sing. Ozzy Osbourne may be gone, but he never left us. His music still plays. Sharon's collapse among the flowers still echoes. And that love, messy, imperfect, unbreakable, will keep healing broken hearts day after day, just like Ozzy once healed ours. Ozzy Osbourne may no longer walk the coal-stained streets of Birmingham, may no longer roam the world amid roaring screams of adoration. But his spirit lives on, echoing through chants that feel like a soul being called home through the haunting, shadowed melodies of Black Sabbath. Where every guitar riff bursts forth from pain too deep for words, and in the tear-soaked, trembling eyes of Sharon Osbourne, the woman who held his hand from the abyss to glory. That farewell was not merely a funeral, it was a symphonic tribute, sacred and solemn, for a man who dared to live, dared to fall, and dared to love with every ounce of his being. If there was ever a moment when you felt lost, and Ozzy's music helped you stand again, Please share your story in the comments below. Every tribute today is a new note in the immortal song he left behind. And don't forget to follow Celebrities Rewind, where we not only recount the lives of legends, but keep them alive through every glance, every tear, and every heart that has never stopped remembering.